Check out how you can get those solar panels installed at your home or residence by going to onesolarsolution.com. Bringing you the world news coming up next. This is Radio Caravan, the world news read by Shabnam Modgil. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg will be buried at the Arlington National Cemetery in a private, intimate ceremony. At the age of 87, she died surrounded by her family at her home in Washington, D.C. due to complications of metastatic pancreatic cancer. Our nation has just lost a jurist of historic stature. We at the Supreme Court have lost a cherished colleague, said Chief Justice John Roberts, and today we mourn, but with confidence that future generations will remember Ruth Bader Ginsburg as we knew her, a tireless and resolute champion of justice. The wife of an Army veteran buried at the cemetery, she is eligible for burial at the cemetery. Appointed to the Supreme Court by President Bill Clinton in 1993, the second woman appointed to the court, she served more than 27 years. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg will lie in repose at the Supreme Court of the United States tomorrow and Thursday. The casket will arrive in front of the court justice before 9:30 tomorrow morning, and a private ceremony will take place in the Great Hall, attended by her family, close friends, and members of the court. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death will be felt at the Supreme Court in the coming weeks as it starts a new term with a 5-3 Conservative majority while preparing for a major case on the Obamacare healthcare law and possible emergency election-related disputes. President Trump has said he would nominate a woman to replace her who died and was a champion of gender equality, and so he is meeting with Judge Amy Coney Barrett at the White House as the conservative jurist emerged as a favorite to replace the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell closing in on securing the votes needed to potentially confirm Donald Trump's third conservative Supreme Court nominee before November's election to decide which party's control of the White House and both chambers of the Congress. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden warned Republicans that rushing a vote to replace the late justice on the Supreme Court before the election would cause irreversible damage and vowed to nominate a black woman to take her seat. The Democratic Party in the U.S. has released digital graphics in 14 Indian languages to encourage South Asians to vote and support their presidential candidate and former Vice President Joe Biden in the November 3rd elections. President Trump last week said his administration would be taking action to promote a pro-American curriculum in U.S. schools in an effort to counteract what he called left-wing indoctrination in education. As the global COVID-19 cases continue to tick upward, schools around the U.S. are struggling to reopen during the pandemic. The United States edging closer to registering 200,000 COVID-19 deaths, the latest grim milestone for the country, just weeks before voters decide if President Trump will stay in office. According to a rolling tally by Johns Hopkins University, 199,743 Americans have died and 6.8 million have been confirmed infected. And despite President Trump's claims that a coronavirus vaccine will soon be available, new polling shows that a majority of Americans have no confidence in him to confirm that it is safe. World Health Organization chief also said there is no guarantee any COVID-19 vaccine in development will work. The coronavirus pandemic appears to be accelerating worldwide, with new cases soaring last week to a new 7-day high of almost 2 million, even though the new deaths numbers have decreased. Storm surge and rainfall combined this morning to bring more flooding along the Texas coast after Tropical Storm Beta made landfall, threatening areas that have already seen their share of damaging weather during a busy hurricane season. The storm made landfall late last night just north of Port O'Connor in Texas and early this morning 35 miles north-northwest of the city with maximum winds of 40 miles per hour. President Trump signed an executive order yesterday authorizing new sanctions on Iranian officials and entities and those that buy or sell arms to them because of the snapped-back United Nations sanctions. And at least 14 Afghan soldiers and police were killed during intense fighting with the Taliban in southern Afghanistan as unabated violence gripped the country despite the ongoing peace talks. Leading Ethiopian opposition figure Jawar Mohammed has told a court at the capital that he was proud to have been charged with terrorism alongside 22 other individuals in a media house. And a group of Islamic State extremists plotting an insurgency in Africa have burned to the ground a luxury tourism resort on one of Mozambique's picturesque islands. Democratic Republic of Congo's president held a rare meeting with his predecessor Joseph Kabila as officials in the fragile coalition government say the former leader could return to the political stage. And the mystery surrounding hundreds of sudden elephant deaths in Botswana seems to have been solved, and the findings bring an end to months of speculation on why at least 330 elephants were found dead in the northwestern region. A naturally occurring neurotoxin and biological phenomenon which has increased due to climate change has been blamed responsible for the toxic blooms of cyanobacteria. And Lebanon's future is at stake, and its oldest European ally, France, holds the key to making a difference. To his credit, President Macron has invested considerable time and effort since the August 4th explosion at Beirut's port left almost 200 dead and thousands injured. Thousands of people demonstrated in Berlin and other German cities, urging the European Union to take in migrants left without shelter after a fire destroyed their biggest camp in Greece. And the European Union Commission Vice President said the next European Union-UK Joint Committee meeting will be held on the 20th of this month in Brussels. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange should be released from a UK prison and not be extradited to the US, according to more than 160 world leaders, politicians and diplomats. The high-powered group gave their support to him in an open letter addressed to Prime Minister Boris Johnson and other government ministers. And the Prime Minister also announced new restrictions on social interactions today as the government tries to slow the spread of COVID-19 before it spirals out of control. In this news out of London, the Spanish government and regional authorities are set to cut the quarantine imposed on those who have had contact with people testing positive to coronavirus for 10 days from a previous 14 days in this report out of Madrid. And top seeds Novak Djokovic and Simona Halep both advanced to the finals of the Italian Open as fans return to the stands at the Foro Italico for the first time. North Korea is preparing for a massive military parade in Pyongyang to mark the 75th anniversary of its ruling party next month. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Radio Caravan. And the Philippine Health Ministry in Manila reported 1,635 novel coronavirus cases, the lowest daily increase in infections in 2 weeks, and 50 new deaths. The UN's first virtual meeting of world leaders starting today with the pre-recorded speeches from some of the planet's biggest powers, keeping at home by the coronavirus pandemic that will likely be a dominant theme at their video gathering this year. President Trump, who prefers speaking to boisterous crowds, is set to give his pre-recorded address to the UN General Assembly as he grapples with the coronavirus pandemic, chilly relations between the US and China, and the ongoing threats from North Korea and Iran, all during a heated campaign for re-election. And the world's greatest powers should respect international law and avoid double standards, according to Chinese leader Xi Jinping, telling a United Nations meeting. And Chinese officials have admitted that birth rates have plummeted among its ethnic Uyghurs, fueling claims that Beijing is subjecting its Muslim minority to a campaign of forced birth control. China ramping up its rhetoric over Taiwan, describing any support for its independence as doomed to fail, and threatened retaliation against U.S. diplomatic visits to the island. China also pushing growing numbers of Tibetan rural laborers off the land and into recently built military-style training centers where they are turned into factory workers, mirroring a program in the western Xinjiang region that rights groups have branded coercive labor. And the People's Liberation Army of China has constructed at least 9 buildings on the Nepal side of the Nepal-China border in the Robot Humla district in Karnali province of Nepal. China began building at least 13 new military positions, including air bases and air defense units near the line of actual control with India after the standoff at Doklam, with work on 4 heliports beginning after the current tensions in Ladakh. And the 6th round of military talks between India and China that lasted 14 hours focused on ways to diffuse the rising tensions along the treacherous and high-altitude friction points in eastern Ladakh, considering the approaching harsh winter. Indian and Chinese military commanders are expected to meet again in a few days after these marathon talks yesterday. Royal Challengers registered a win in the 13th season of the IPL yesterday by defeating Sunrisers Hyderabad in a topsy-turvy affair at the Dubai International Stadium. And we do have a Broadcast Audience Research Council claiming that a record 20 crore people watched the IPL 2020 opener between the Mumbai Indians and the Chennai Super Kings in Abu Dhabi on Saturday night. Congress President Sonia Gandhi, accompanied by her son Rahul Gandhi, has returned to India this morning after undergoing a routine health checkup in the United States. And Prime Minister Modi will hold a high-level virtual meeting tomorrow to review the coronavirus disease situation in the country, as the tally has crossed the 55 lakh mark today on account of 75,000 new cases in the last 24 hours. The India's recovery rate has crossed the 80% mark, with over 90,000 recoveries recorded for the 3rd consecutive day. The Taj Mahal in Agra has reopened its doors to tourists after being shut for nearly 6 months. And Bollywood actor Riya Chakrabarti's judicial custody was extended today till the 6th of October. She and her brother, both arrested by the Narcotics Control Bureau, have moved the Bombay High Court for bail, and their applications are likely to come up for hearing tomorrow. The Goa government will approach the Supreme Court to seek an extension in the timelines that the apex court had set for completing the trial of disgraced former Tehelka editor Karun Tejpal. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi termed Jammu and Kashmir, the Palestine disputes, as the most glaring issues of the United Nations. Pakistan again looking to China, Malaysia and Turkey to help it get off lightly for failing to fully implement an action plan to tackle terror funding. People of Pakistan keenly looking forward to welcoming President Xi Jinping, said Prime Minister Imran Khan during a meeting with the Chinese ambassador today. And an anti-terrorism court in Karachi sentenced 2 MQM workers to death in the high-profile Baldia factory fire case 8 years after the blaze claimed hundreds of lives. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I have in the news for you today on this first day of autumn. Bringing you the world news coming up next.